Hello. Yes, Daniel the naturopath. I wanted to talk to you today about nutrient dense foods, and especially this chapter called Nutrition as Remedy, which you can find in The Mysteries of Nutrition, Life Changing Ideas to Heal the Body. I'm a little bit sick today, I'm usually happy when I'm sick because I always know something's detoxifying, something's coming out. It's rare that I'm sick, but I'm happy when I am. And the sicker the better sometimes, like if I can really get some stuff out, that's really, it's really good for the system. We spend most of our life detoxifying all these things that are inside of us. And so those moments actually help us to clean out the system. Um, yeah, so nutrition as remedy. I'll go ahead and try to read because I think it might be easier. And instead of just doing everything live, but I can kind of go live on some elements of it. So this is from Nutrition as Remedy, and you can find the audiobook online right now for free. After it will be a paid service, but for now. And so for recovery, reconstruction, to maintain health, to find the will to act, and for stable, focused energy without the need for stimulants or sugar stimulation. So, point number one, find a homeopath who is trained in the Sankaran system, which is the vital sensation method, through rajansankaran.com, or by searching online for an able practitioner who can help you find your fundamental unique remedy. This has been such a powerful thing for me, is to find a homeopathic remedy which goes very deep and not using the typical homeopathy that we're used to seeing, which is, symptomatic, and, this is taken for that, and this is taken for that, and then the dilutions are very standard, and these are much higher dilutions, which touch much more on I guess a more informational system, spiritual medicine, something like that, but touching more on an informational system than on a material system, and having, demultiplied effect because of it. So check that out. That's one of the keys to healing and to properly detoxifying. There are some people who say that the vital sensation method is rejoining what the original goal of homeopathy was, which was, as Hahnemann stated, which was to give people back their destiny. And I also add to that I feel like the homeopathic method, when it's done right, also helps us to detoxify vaccines. And so it's almost like spiritually opposing this anti-spiritual vaccine autism spectrum, where people are shut off from their emotions and moral sphere, and there's a kind of a blockage there. It's kind of trying to reverse that. So it's not just a little innocent, thing on the corner. It's right in the center, but we just have to see it that way. So that's point number. Well, they're not numbered, so I guess it's just bullet point. Next bullet point: reduce carbohydrates intake. Next bullet point: quality organ meats once a week. In a compromised food system, the vital organs and blood are the least compromised. Do not overcook. Dijon mustard sauce, horseradish sauce, or other homemade sauces can help with the taste. An abundance of liver pills are not the same thing, but they are better than nothing. Or make easy liver pate from this book weekly, which is like a chicken liver pate with potatoes and onions and things like that, carrots. So if on American soil, see the details of the recipe on how to add blood to make up for the impoverished American soil in this key recipe, like pig's blood, pork blood, or beef blood, or whatever. It sounds disgusting, but whenever you get to it, it just sweetens it up a little bit and gives it a little more color. It's actually very neutral, and we just have lost our kind of touch with that. That's in most of our traditions. You're going to find these blood puddings and sausages and black bread in Norway, and more chia in Spain. So these are all there. It's just we've kind of lost track with that, and it's kind of like blood is a little bit like the soil. It helps in the gut. It's like human soil, I guess you could say. But it's not like we're drinking it. I mean, it's like it's cooked, and so it looks a little bit like an omelet when it's cooked, but it's a little sweeter. Very similar to an omelet, just a little bit sweeter. So let's see here. Yeah, see the red, white, active, passive principles in the body laid out in the omnivore chapter. Okay, so that red and white principle has a lot to do with the testosterone and the, not estrogen, but the other side, the feminine and masculine, the active and passive principles in the body, one being represented by the red and the other represented by the white being the parasympathetic and all that is relaxation, recovery, healing, and then the orthosympathetic, which would be everything which is active and, you know, um, what is it, willpower based, trying to get you to move and act. And so you need both of these principles in the body to have a healthy digestion and to also have a healthy life. So you can kind of notice that these red and white principles come together in a lot of foods. Weston Price said that the orange color of food was actually a symbol of a certain type of origin of vitamin creation, this orange hue or whatever. And so this is right in between, this orangish pinkish hue, this is right in between the red and the white principles. I mean, of course you need green as well, right? You need lettuce and greens and stuff. But so this is just like, I really like, what do you call it? Chopping up like parsley or cilantro and then putting it in a mixer with like some cold cooked potatoes, and it makes this kind of tabbouleh, but so really, that's a very strong green element there. But anyway, I'm off track there. Yeah, and these two elements, this red and white element, this active and passive, these principles come together in a lot of foods that we love, like the salmon and lox, the lox and cream, bagel, you also see it in like fish eggs with cream, and like carrot. I know carrot juice and coconut cream or even normal cream was used in hospitals to treat tuberculosis back in Germany. So they've understood this whole association of the carotene and the fat and this kind of, quicker healing, and it reddens the skin, which anything which reddens, like in that way, like the healthy term in Latin is called rubor. So anything that reddens is actually pushing something out, And so, I mean, unless it's like a cut or something, but like in general, it's a phenomenon of pushing something out to the surface. So, try not to get this bottle in the way. I probably should have positioned that differently, but that's all right. Yeah, so those principles are important because you're finding high vitamin concentrations when you combine these elements. And like I said, the blood kind of acts on the red side, and, the high tryptophan foods and the unsoy fed chickens and cream and even shrimp, and there's a lot of different foods that have this more tryptophan kind of feel to them and help with the relaxation or the recovery phase. They help calm the body, whereas the other one activates it. So next bullet point, minimum 1 to 2 soy-free fertile farmers or duck eggs per day, any way you like, or for the best digestibility, you can poach for 3 minutes in a small pot with some white vinegar and water, then strain on a towel or mesh. I prefer to soft boil eggs, keeping the yolk raw, then serve in a ramekin with unfiltered olive oil, Frontier brewer's yeast, not the organic one, the inorganic one, which is actually much less salty. And a spoonful of fish eggs without preservatives, like salmon eggs or whatever. And these salmon eggs need to be used in like a medical way, like you buy a bunch of them and then they usually come frozen or whatever at like a Russian shop. And you buy a bunch of them and you take like a little teaspoon per day, and it's kind of like a medicine, you hold on to it daily, and so you keep it coming in on a regular basis like that. And then also write, you can also beat the eggs with Devon double cream for fluffy French-style omelets. Do not overcook. 2 to 3, the reason we don't overcook the omelets is because you need a little bit of the raw egg protein per day. And the French know that. They have a lot of dishes like tartare and different things where you eat the raw egg yolk And and so you try, and that way they cook their eggs too. It looks like it's cooked because the flaps are brown, but on the inside it's a little more raw. And they've mixed it with cream, and they've beaten it to where you're not getting like isolated egg white proteins that could be uncooked. Maybe you're getting a kind of a mix, and so it actually ends up working. But you have to have good eggs for this, otherwise the whole thing doesn't work, right? So soy-free, corn-free eggs, basically. Order online. Amish farms in Pennsylvania, whatever, maybe in your local shops, but I doubt it. They're not in a lot of shops, and they're usually about $8 or $9. So that's kind of the deal on that. You have to get to that price point to overcome the standard feed price point, which most people are using. And non-OGM doesn't mean anything in that category, because non-OGM is still soy, and it's still the same corn that has organic glyphosate inside of it, which is insane that it even exists, but they're sneaky. So just avoid it in general. A lot of the chickens that I used to have chickens, but you can raise them off of wheat alone pretty much. I mean, they can eat wheat. I mean, I supplement it with like liver and things like that, but and then they have to have a lot of grass, right? But and worms, and there was a lot of worms after they'd been there for a while because of the excrement, and it just creates that. So they create their own food to a certain degree, but they can, the best chickens in the world in France, called the Brest, they're like, that's the region. They just feed them raw milk and wheat. That's it. So yeah, you can do a lot with those two combinations. So homemade lacto-fermented sauerkraut and its brine to be consumed daily or as needed. Unsmoked canned cod livers from Iceland found in Russian or European shops. Sometimes they'll have a smoked flavor or something. That's okay, but unsmoked. You don't want something to be cooked twice. It's already sterilized in the can, and so now you have like another. You want it to just go through one cooking process, not two. Then the vitamins get destroyed. So, and the vitamins are in there. They're less in the oil, actually, in those cans, and more in the liver itself. So you can even throw out the oil, but the liver is important in that situation. It's less subject to destruction through sterilization. Crab and lobster roe and tamale, which in parentheses liver. So that's like the greenish substance that you find inside the lobster head, which is amazing, and it gives you libido for like 3 or 4 days, and it's a really powerful food that we should never be throwing out. Same with the crab. In America, the foreigners know about this, but America people don't. They just male crabs, big crab legs, and white crab meat, which has iodine in it. But if you go for the female crabs and you can get in there and eat inside of it, it's like a red kind of omelet. Once it's cooked, it looks like a red omelet on the inside. And this is like all called crab fat. And there's even like sometimes roe and all. I mean, it's just much better. I think you can find it in the males too, but not just in the claws, So you have to kind of know how to do these things. And I live in a place where near Redondo Beach, there's actually a huge seafood market where they have all the different types of crabs divided up into male and female. And I think, most Americans wouldn't even know what to do with that. I think it's because the foreign tourists that come through there know the difference between those two and what they're doing there. So they have them divided for a very good reason. So anyway, prefer home fried foods using duck fat, lard, beef tallow, I prefer the half butter, half olive oil mix, because I've found a lot of the duck fats and lards and beef tallow and things that are in America, they're coming from the wrong animals. So even the duck fat, sometimes there's a good duck fat that comes from Canada. You can find it in America. You might have to order it online. That's a good one. But I don't trust some of the really white duck fats. It's supposed to be yellow. There's something wrong. I don't know. So I would stick with just half butter, half olive oil. Buy like a really good quality butter, and then just use like half and half. So that's like a half stick, and then like some olive oil, and then let it fry in there or whatever. So organic peanut oil, palm oil, ghee, some sunflower oil. Interesting fact, fish and chips were traditionally fried in beef tallow, and this tradition began with frying the tails as they were the least desired. Everyone has access to light frying with a butter and olive oil mix. You can even make your own breading using a toasted sourdough baguette run through the food processor or blender. Next bullet point, steak tartare, every so often made from grass-fed bison, elk, deer, New Zealand lamb shanks, or New Zealand, Australian steaks. Grass-fed beef heart is another possibility. Australian steak or small farm, unsoy-fed animals plus raw egg yolk and condiments like capers and stuff like that. It's best to finely cut the meat yourself so the tartare is fresh, not packaged. You may also sear each side rapidly if you eat tartare more often, as many cultures, including those of Europe, would sear the edges of the meat before eating raw. Cubed grass-fed beef heart has almost zero taste when fresh, so adding some capers, mango, I don't really like mango, but whatever, and egg yolk can make this easy to serve in a small ramekin to those who have never tried it. Pickles, onions, parsley, you can cut all that up in little pieces too. That's kind of nice with mustard, and some people use Tabasco, whatever. Next bullet point. Homemade chicken, beef, lamb, or fish stock, 1 to 3 bowls per day, or added to soups and sauces, etc. This helps with concentration, overall healing, and mineral absorption, not to mention improved digestion. Also consider the tradition of 1 roasted chicken per week to increase tryptophan, which helps us sleep better. It helps with the digestion because it's lipophilic, so it pulls hydrophilic. The gelatin pulls water towards itself. So when it's in the stomach, it pulls those acids to where they stick to it, and it's a better digestion. It's the gelatin, I think, that does that. But so also consider the tradition of 1 roasted chicken per week to increase tryptophan, which helps us sleep better. High tryptophan will only be found in smaller French-style hens with slender bodies, soy-free hens, less expensive soy-free stew hens from farms in or out of state, local or smaller than usual hens from specialty shops, wild turkey, or equivalent. You can tell the quality of a chicken by how much gelatin it produces for a soup and how soft or hard the bones are after making a 24-hour broth. The long bone shaft section should never break. On a side note, fresh local raw shrimp ceviche is high in tryptophan. Most shrimp is frozen here in California, but anyway, I found fresh shrimp when I was in Charleston. Cooked shrimp, there's probably still some good to be had with the shrimp anyway, but I'm just, mentioning it. Cooked shrimp meat can be an alternative to chicken meat. As in Scandinavia, you will need to combine bacon with most seafood to bring the needed fat, with the exception of herring, especially salted whole fish herring found in Russian shops, which is more filling than the vinegar-based herring chopped up that you find in stores, or other fatty fish like sardines and mackerel. I use a little bit of chorizo. Like, I find this Spanish chorizo, which is like not very expensive, that's imported, and I'll use like a couple little cuts of it, throw it in with any kind of fish dish I make, just because it helps you to have that satiety where you're like, you feel full, but you've eaten fish. It's kind of like a little best of both worlds, because I don't really trust a lot of the bacon here. You could probably do the same with like prosciutto. You could buy like a shank, which is not that expensive if you find them. And, it's because you're buying in bulk, and you can throw that shank in the fridge and it'll last for like 6 months. You don't even need a special knife because you can cut it off in cubes. It's really good. And so there's other ways to do this, that work without having to get the wrong bacon or whatever in you, which has high estrogen, whatever, fats, soy, whatever. So we're going to stop here, and then we'll pick back up on part 2. I left the magnesium on here because it's just one of the best products for everything, so I always talk about it for healing the nervous system, etc. That's over at theheartoftradition.com, but we will come back in part 2.